The European Commission is working towards advancing the frontier of AI, financing innovative projects and, among others, focusing on more trustable, explainable AI, the one which aspires to empower rather than replace humans. A human-centric approach to artificial intelligence. And now let us welcome Mr. Roberto Viola, Director General of DG Connect at the European Commission.
Good morning. I hope you can see me and hear me.
Yes, everything looks fine. Thank you, Mr. Viola, for the opportunity to interview you. A lot of stakeholders are very concerned about the impact that AI can have on fundamental rights and safety. Is AI really such a danger?
Well, I think AI, as every innovation we had in the history of mankind, it's a blessing to start with. It makes many things we do safer. I think what we do, life is a very dangerous exercise when we cross the street, when we drive a car, we fly, or we are even at home. So I think we should not confuse the dangers or the perils of life with the AI and the algorithms. The old direction of having a safer cars, which can be much faster in reaction than we are as human beings, predict extreme weather events, cure better, spot things the doctor cannot see. All of this, for me, it's less danger, much more safety, and a better quality of life for all of us. Of course, as in every innovation, there's always a bit of a dark side that we need to understand better. When it comes to AI, if you take one of the latest algorithms that is being tested, it's made of 175 billion parameters, so well beyond the human being comprehension. And that's where, I mean, we need to understand what we don't understand, or try to explain, trying to be transparent, trying to measure the outcomes of something that is indeed very complex. And of course, I mean, no one wants to be denied the credit because maybe you are a fan of the wrong football club, or no one wants to be denied a job because maybe the algorithm made a mistake or thinks you will never do the job. I like to play the piano. I'm a very bad pianist, but I like to continue playing the piano. Even the algorithm says you cannot do that. So that's the part, and being more serious about fundamental rights, so access to credit, access to a job, access to schooling. That's the part where, of course, we have to be careful. And also we have to be careful when AI is utilized in environments which put human life at risk. Of course, for a reason, like, I mean, being in a car or being, I mean, in an hospital. That's also where, I mean, we need to have predictability in terms of explainability, transparency, performance, standards, and what we call the 4I principle. That means that the algorithm designer should always be checked against others that could verify what kind of work these algorithm designers have been doing.
Well, AI exists already, and there are many legislations that apply. Why do we need a specific AI legislation and regulation?
I think, indeed, you're right. I mean, AI is not new, although, I mean, the scale and scope of AI, it's really expanding at the speed of light. And that makes AI particularly intriguing when it comes to, I mean, looking at existing rules. I make just an example among many. We have legislation in the area of medical devices. And this legislation leads to the CE marking that you see on devices. And that means the device is safe to use in an hospital. And indeed, when, for instance, during the COVID crisis, we rolled out AI in hospitals, we were looking for equipment having this famous CE device. But then we realized that the CE device doesn't tell you what the algorithm is doing. The CE device does not really, the CE marking does not really measure the performance of the algorithm. So you need in product legislation, you need to integrate it with a dimension which is completely new. Now, you need not to reinvent the wheel. That's why we have proposed an horizontal instrument, an instrument that plugs into the existing regulation, doesn't change the regulation, but complements it in an area where rules were not existing. So it's fair to say that if you type approval AI in an hospital, you do it against the standard, against, verification where the data set comes from, and also, understanding with a collective, peer review, the effectiveness of what you are rolling out.
Now, there is no precedent for AI regulation worldwide. For the Commission, what are the key principles on which an AI regulation should be based?
We like to do difficult things. So indeed, there's no precedent, but this AI regulation doesn't come out of the blue. It comes out of 4 years of intensive work with the best AI experts in Europe and in the world. It comes with an enormous stakeholder engagement. It comes with, thousands and thousands of replies to our consultation in terms of feedback. So we think we have taken extreme care that what we have proposed, it's really based on the best possible understanding and the best possible consensus in order to find an equilibrium. One thing that we are extremely proud of is that it's not regulating for the sake of regulating. It's about making sure that a small part of the AI algorithms, which are the ones that touch fundamental rights or the safety of people, this part, receives a proper treatment in the EU legislation. And so it is the so-called risk-based approach. We do not, regulate everything, but we regulate if there's a risk. And also the intensity of regulation varies according to the degree of risk. So we have an extreme, which is very limited number of cases where there's prohibition. For the rest, it's understanding, it's inserting, as I said, new rules in existing rules, and expanding, the reach of protection of fundamental rights when it comes to algorithmic decisions.
There is already quite a lot of debate about the list of high-risk applications. Some think it's too short, others would say it's way too long. How did you select the cases on the list?
So if 50% says short, 50% says it's too long, probably it's right. But what we have looked, as I was saying before, it's the degree of risk, which once again comes from 2 different dimensions. The first one, it's risk in using it in terms of exposing life or health of people, stability, of systems, important system that guarantees services at risk. And there, of course, you have a family of applications which are already regulated by a number of EU laws. But as I was explaining before, we missed the AI part. So we, again, on those high-risk applications, which are already all the applications by which you need some sort of type approval, being a car, being a medical device, as I was explaining, being a plane, we did not reinvent the regulation. We have prepared, say, a module that you can plug in and then make those existing regulations which limit the risk of using those devices fit for AI. So this is the first exercise. So again, the list of regulated devices in terms of industrial and home use is not invented by us. it's existing in EU legislation and well codified. The other dimension is a bit new indeed, which are the fundamental risks, the risk for fundamental rights. And there, of course, the selection looked at what we do, who we are, and whether our fundamental rights, which is the right to have a job, as I was saying, the right to have, to be assisted if we need credit to send our kids to school, to make the best selection in a world, the right to have a future. This is not impaired by algorithmic decisions, which again, let me stress, there's nothing wrong in utilizing algorithms and big data in order to improve the education system, the healthcare system, and job recruitment. And maybe, if well utilized, they increase the possibility of people rather than decreasing them. So, but in order to do that, we have to make sure that the designer has gone through a cycle where it's analyzed the impact on fundamental rights, has made sure that the data set is well selected, has made sure that there's no bias, which is something that cannot be accepted in our society. And if all of this is well done, well documented, then I think we should just welcome, the introduction of new tools. So in this sense, the list of high-risk application focuses on these two dimensions: devices, applications which are in use, which are already regulated, and the other one is protecting, fundamental rights. That's the way the list has been drawn. Of course, the list can be made shorter, longer, but what really counts here are the criteria which are in the regulation. And on this, of course, we will need now to look at the democratic debate in Council and Parliament and come up collectively in Europe, as we are used to do, with the best possible compromise in order to have the list not too short, not too long.
How about the impact of the requirements on the companies? Are you sure they aren't excessively onerous?
Regulation normally is not taken as good news by companies. And this is a reflex which is well understandable. Now, in this case, let me dare to compare with vaccination. A bit of regulation, it's much better than confused regulation, patchwork of things, low acceptance by users. So our ambition is to have really the minimum possible layer of regulation, but also the maximum necessary when it comes to protection, avoiding that each individual member state in Europe come up with all sorts of rules which make then, the internal market not functioning. Avoiding that instead of doing this with 4 years preparation, with all the engagement which this event is part of, with the democratic debate, which of course will last some time. So an overall preparation that really, will have taken years by the time this will be approved. And the risk is that without all this, you might see mushrooming improvisation, political acceleration in a direction which is not well understood. So I find this the right dose, let's say, to have immunity of the system of all of this. And that also applies to the world. I think, frankly, you said it, that this is the first serious systematic attempt to have a regulation around AI. I hope that our approach, risk-based approach, will be the gold standard in the world. And again, this will protect firms from political decisions, from irrational decisions, and hopefully also at the same time, let's not forget, we need to protect the citizens to make sure that they get the best out of AI, but also their fundamental rights are preserved. And that's why, once again, this could become really the gold standard in the world, and that I think would be a win-win for everyone.
But to come back a bit, if the requirements create so little burden, will their application really make a difference?
Well, I didn't say they create so little burden. I said they are necessary, and we try to make sure they're also sufficient. So let me be a bit more concrete. When a software house designs a recruitment tool based on AI, the regulation suggests, and I mean, when adopted, imposes that a number of checks are being made on the algorithm, on the robustness, the transparency, the explainability, and all of this. Now, this is, of course, not necessarily a walk in the park. We have calculated that this is not impressively burdensome, probably on the order of 10, 20% more than in absence of regulation in terms of cost. But, I mean, think about the outcome. I mean, the outcome is that you would have a system which is much more robust. I mean, you don't need to increase the cost of producing software by 300% because you want to be sure, absolutely sure, that this will be safe. I mean, even little incremental steps can make the difference. Here, of course, we are not talking about 1% incremental step. We are talking about some degree of regulation which is necessary. But I mean, the flip side of it is that clearly you will have an algorithm which has much higher chance to be accepted, for instance, in public administration, much higher chance that, I mean, there would be no accidents with the algorithm. But think about also the liability of a company if the algorithm makes systematic mistakes. So all of this, it's, of course, an extra cost at the very beginning, but I would say in balance, there will be gains at the end of the road.
Roberto, Viola, Director General of DG Connect, thank you for now. I am saying for now because you are going to join us again soon for the political panel on AI regulation with the presidency of the Council of the European Union. So thank you.
Thank you to you for your questions. Thanks. It's been a pleasure.